You're listening to the 10 podcast where we teach, empower, and nurture minds. I'm your host, Justine, and I would like to welcome you back to the Nurturing Children's Confidence series, episode 9. And in this week's episode, we're going to look at a topic that many educators and parents can relate to. How can we best help children to regulate their emotions after a meltdown? And how can we help them to navigate those big emotions during that meltdown?
Welcome to the 10 Podcast, where we teach, empower, and nurture minds. This podcast is dedicated to providing parents and educators with valuable tips, strategies, and insights to support children and young with or without special educational needs. Your host is Justine Foster, a qualified special educational needs teacher and a certified children's coach. Join us as we explore ways to install confidence and self-esteem in children from a young age.
Whether you're a parent, a carer, or an educator, we've seen it all. A child gets frustrated or overwhelmed, and suddenly they're in a meltdown mode. This can look different for different children. Maybe they'll be shouting, crying, or even completely shutting down, being defiant. For educators, it can feel really overwhelming, especially when we're trying to keep the rest of the class together, keep them on track. But today we're going to talk about how you can support children during these moments, and most importantly, how to help them bounce back and get back on track and get back into their learning. But before we start, let's begin with some foundational knowledge. First, let's define what is emotional regulation and dysregulation. So emotional regulation is the ability to monitor and manage your emotions, thoughts, and behaviors in a way that is healthy. This means recognizing your emotional states and having the tools to either maintain that state or adjust that state. For children, emotional regulation is what helps them to stay calm and focus in class, play well with their friends, and handle disappointments without a meltdown. For example, imagine a child is frustrated because they can't solve a puzzle. If they are able to regulate their emotion effectively, they might take a deep breath, ask for help, or calmly try again. They know how to manage that frustration without letting it take over or getting out of control. On the other hand, emotional dysregulation is when someone finds it difficult to respond appropriately to difficult situations. It's when emotions become too intense to control, and children may have a hard time thinking clearly, communicating effectively, following direction, or calming down. Dysregulation can lead to behaviors like meltdown, aggression, defiance, or withdrawn. For example, in a dysregulated state, a child might be frustrated by trying to solve a puzzle. They might shout, throw the puzzle across the room, or burst into tears because they don't know how to handle that feeling of disappointment. It is important to remember that dysregulation is a normal part of child development. Every child experiences it. Our goal is not to prevent children having emotional outbursts like frustration, sadness, or anger, but is to help them learn how to recognize and manage those feelings in a healthy way. Emotional regulation is a skill that develops over time with the right support. If you've just joined us, you're listening to the 10 Podcast where we teach, empower, and nurture minds. And in this week's episode, we're looking at how best us as parents, carers, and educators can support our children to regulate their emotion during and after a meltdown. Now let's talk about a special tool that you can use to help your children to regulate their emotions. We're going to talk about a helpful tool called zones of regulations. Think of these as different zones that help us to identify where we are emotionally and what we can do about those emotions. The zone of regulation is a tool that breaks down our emotional state in 4 color-coded zones. It's simple but powerful for children because it gives them a visual way to identify their emotions and understand what they can do to regulate. Let's go through each zone in detail. The blue zone, this zone represents low energy and alertness. It's when children feel tired, sad, bored, or sick. Picture a child coming home after a long day of school, dragging their feet, not wanting to talk or play, and just wanting to lie down. This child is in the blue zone. No matter what zone the child is in, remember to support them in that zone. The aim is not to drag them from one zone to the next, saying, okay, yes, you're sick, you're not feeling well, but come on, let's go and do your homework or let's get back into class. The main thing is to support them in that zone, to regulate in that zone so they can transition back smoothly into the zone of calmness and happiness where they are fully regulated. So, how can you support the child in the blue zone? When children are in the blue zone, they may need gentle encouragement or an activity to help them recharge. For instance, reading a calm book, offer a snack, or give them a short nap or quiet time can help them to restore energy. Let's look at it like this. Think of the blue zone like a low battery. Just like we recharge our phone, children need a little extra time to rest to feel like themselves again. Let's look at the green zone. This is the zone that everyone wants their children in, but it's impossible to be in the green zone all the time. The green zone is the zone of balance. In this zone, children feel calm, focused, and ready to engage, ready to learn. They are alert, but in control. This is ideal state for learning, playing, and interacting. For example, imagine a child calmly focusing on a puzzle or happily engaged in a conversation. This is the green zone where children are in a state of calmness and readiness. How do you support a child in a green zone? When children are in the green zone, it's a great time to encourage learning, social interaction, or creative play. Reinforce their positive behaviors and let them know they are in a good place. Think of green zone as the sweet spot of a balanced car ride. Everything is running smoothly. Make it the perfect time for children to take on challenges or learn new things. The yellow zone. Let's look at the yellow zone. This zone represents heightened alertness, but the child is still in control. Emotions here may include excitement, anxiety, or frustration. In the yellow zone, children are on edge and may need help to avoid slipping into the red zone. So we need to focus on this zone and help them to not enter the red zone. Imagine a child getting anxious before a test. They're feeling fidgety or frustrated while struggling with a difficult task. They're not in full-blown meltdown, but they're at the risk of escalating. How do you support children in the yellow zone? When a child is in the yellow zone, offer strategies to help them regulate. Encourage them to take deep breath, go for a short walk, or use a sensory tool like a stress ball to release energy. These actions can help them regain control and move back towards the green zone. Think of the yellow zone like approaching storm clouds. We see signs, and if we act early, just as we would by grabbing an umbrella when it's about to rain, we can prevent them from escalating. Now let's take a look at the red zone. This is a zone of dysregulation. When children are in the red zone, emotions are intense and out of control. They may feel extreme anger, frustration, or panic. This is a time when they are most likely to experience a meltdown. For example, picture a child having a tantrum because something didn't go their way. They may scream, throw things, or cry uncontrollably. They are fully dysregulated. How do you support a child in this zone? When in the red zone, a child's emotions have overtaken them, just as an overheated engine needs cooling. Prioritize safety and calmness. Avoid giving instruction or reasoning. Instead, create a comforting environment, allowing the child to calm down. Ensure you prioritize their safety. Ensure that you give them something that they can squeeze to let off some of that steam, and stay close by to reassure them. Think of the red zone like an overheated engine. When a car engine is too hot, we don't try to drive it further. We have to let it cool down first. Similarly, Children in the red zone need time to cool down before they can respond to anything or anyone. Just to let you know that the zones of regulation is on my website, www.tenyourmind.com. You can download a copy of the zones of regulation and you can also research it on Google. But on my website, there'll be a blog on my website which explain more about the zones of regulations and how to use them. Print that off, have it with your child to make sure it's effective. You regulate, ask them throughout the day how they are feeling. So they can point, they can show you how they are feeling. Children who are nonverbal, they can use their photos to move a picture of them around the zone of regulation. You can laminate it so they can show you or point how they are feeling. Because sometimes children cannot speak when they're dysregulated. So they may want to show you how they are feeling. Strategies should be clearly displayed for each zone, how they can bounce back, how they can get to a state of regulation. So parents, carer, download this and use it at home or in school. It is essential that you support children in whatever zone they are in. Do not try to rush them back to the green zone. Our emotions are like waves, naturally rise and fall. The goal is to help children to understand their emotions, not to avoid certain feelings. Remember, let's recap the blue zone. When children are in the blue zone, they might feel low on energy, just like a phone with a drained battery. Remember to use strategies such as to stimulate them, to gently encourage them, offer cozy activity, or just let them rest. This can help them to get back to the state of regulation. Green zone. If they're in the green zone, this is where children are calm, regulated, and ready to learn. When they're in the green zone, it is an opportunity to nurture their strengths and positive behavior. Think of it as a smooth car ride. Encourage them to take on challenges, try new things, or interact with others. Praise them for their focus and calmness. Help them to recognize that when they are in this state, it is amazing. They are doing well. The yellow zone. In the yellow zone, we're looking to catch the stormy clouds before they break. Offer quick regulation tools like deep breathing, short breaks, movement break to prevent escalation. The red zone. When children are in the red zone, a child's emotion is overtaken, they're out of control. Just as an overheated engine needs cooling, prioritize their safety and calmness. Avoid giving instruction and reasoning. Instead, create comforting environment. Be around to reassure them. After they've cooled down, you can gently guide them to reflect and regulate. If you've just joined us, you're listening to the 10 podcast where we teach, empower, and nurture minds. And in this week's episode, we're looking at how to help our children regulate their emotions after a meltdown. In this next segment, we're going to talk about managing meltdown and supporting recovery. Managing meltdown is one of the most challenging part of supporting children emotional regulation. When a child is in a meltdown, remember that their brain is not ready to process instruction. Imagine your child in the red zone because of a disagreement with a sibling. They might scream or cry, and it's tempting to tell them to calm down or stop overreacting. Instead, try to remain calm yourself. Give them some space and focus on soothing actions like soft voice, gentle breathing, or even a familiar object to hold on to. After the meltdown, take time to help your child return to the green zone. Let them cool down fully before returning to activities. For example, in school, teachers might allow a child to complete a calming activity like drawing, coloring, or reading quietly before rejoining the class. At home, parents, you can offer a comforting routine or a quiet time before re-engaging the child into their activity or their chores. Just remember, do not try to rush that child back to the green zone. Support them in whatever zone they are in. The main aim is not to avoid these emotions, but how to regulate and bounce back from them effectively. In this next segment, we're going to talk about how we can minimize future meltdown. So the main aim of the zones of regulation is to help children to check in with themselves throughout the day. They can simply check what zone they are in. For example, at the start of each day, help children to identify their zone. If they're feeling in the yellow zone before school, you might consider spending a few extra minutes with them to talk about their feelings and give them some reassurance, a hug, some encouragement. Carers, teacher, you can make a zone of regulation chart or a poster visible in the class or in the kitchen at home. When children have this as a reference, they can identify their emotion more easily and let you know when they need support. Emotional regulation is a journey, and every child learns on their own, in their own way, at their own pace. By using the zone of regulation, you can give them a tool they can carry with them as they grow. Thank you for tuning into the 10 podcasts. I hope you've learned something this week. If you found today's episode helpful, share it with a parent or educator. Together, we can help our children learn to manage their emotions and thrive. Join us next time for more insights and strategies designed to empower our young minds in our lives. Until next time, keep nurturing and empowering our children. Take care. Bye.
To make the most of today's episode, download additional resources or contact Justine at www.tenyourmind.com. That's TENyourmind.com. You can also visit www.coachjustine.com for more information.